This is a summary of a literature review I conducted on assessment for learning. All of the current New South Wales Board of Studies syllabus and the new Australian curriculum all promote assessment for learning as well as assessment of learning. There is significant research that suggests that improving assessment for learning increases student learning outcomes. So what is it? What are its key principles? And what does it look like in a classroom? These are the main researches that I have used in my review. There is much discussion within the literature about the precise definition of assessment for learning, but I am going to use Black and Williams' following definition. That is, practice in a classroom is formative to the extent that evidence about student achievement is elicited, interpreted, and used by teachers, learners, or their peers to make decisions about the next steps in instruction that are likely to be better or better founded than the decisions they would have taken in the absence of the evidence that was elicited. This definition makes some important points. That assessment for learning requires the involvement of students, not just teachers. That the evidence gathered has to be utilised to make decisions about what to do next or what to do differently within the teaching and learning process. And that it mostly occurs in a classroom, fundamentally embedding assessment within the flow of normal class activity. Assessment for learning is not about the results of a test. It is about observations, discussions, questioning, monitoring student engagement, providing feedback and self-reflection, mostly occurring simultaneously with the teaching and learning itself. Assessment for learning emphasises the interaction between teaching and learning and assessment. It occurs during the lessons through observations and informal dialogue between teachers and students. It occurs as teachers reflect on the purpose of assessments, identifying what students do or do not already know, and adjusting planned activities in response to their observations. It occurs when there is a shared understanding of teachers and learners of the goals of learning and the criteria by which it will be assessed. Some examples may be the correction a teacher suggests as he discusses a student's writing in class. Or it might be a student correcting her maths homework, realising that she doesn't understand a certain element of the process and deciding to ask the teacher for clarification. Or in opening the lesson, a teacher may ask a question to ensure some prerequisite knowledge is understood. When it becomes obvious that most of the class do not have this comprehension, instead of continuing on with her planned activity, she stops and reviews the previous content first. Assessment for learning recognises the importance of the students' involvement in their own learning. It occurs when students decide to use assessment evidence to improve their understanding. For example, agreeing to complete a remedial exercise, asking their friend for help with an assignment, or reflecting on their learning and ways to achieve their goal. It makes use of self-assessment and peer assessment, and it encourages students to take responsibility for their own learning. Self-assessment can improve learning as the process of judging one's own work, identifying the gap between it and an exemplar, and completing more learning activities to increase their understanding puts the student firmly in control of their own learning. It helps pupils know the expectations of a task and provides clear learning goals for which to strive. Peer assessment is an important complement to self-assessment. Peers can explain things in language that other students understand. Some students may feel more comfortable interrupting a fellow student to ask for clarification than they would a teacher. Assessment for learning provides effective feedback to students that is focused on the task, not the learner, is clear and constructive about strengths and weaknesses of the work, provides practical advice on how to improve, and uses constructive comments, not marks. However, the type of feedback is important. Feedback that targets developing skills and comprehension and that shows that mistakes are chances to learn are especially effectual. Struggling students need very specific and immediate feedback. Feedback that is descriptive and focused on the idea that a student's work is a product in progress conveys strong messages that improvement is possible. Some examples might be a teacher saying, "This is very well explained here, but could you elaborate your ideas in this section?" Or while checking some maths questions, "Your solutions are correct for these problems, but you need to consider the units for each answer." Assessment for Learning acknowledges the impact assessment has on student self-esteem and motivation. It helps build self-efficacy when teachers attribute success to effort, when a student's performance is compared to his previous attempt, not to another student's performance, and when students are led to set mastery goals. When teachers attribute a student's effort to their performance, it keeps the student in control, as it is something that they can change. He might say, "You told me how much effort you put into this essay, and look how well you have done." On the other hand, teachers can lower a student's motivation by unconsciously expressing a belief in his lack of ability. This might be done by expressing pity at a poor performance, for example, or by saying, "Better luck next time." Learners who hold mastery goals are focused on understanding, mastering new skills, and accepting challenges. Teachers promote this by focusing on student progress, providing chances to improve, accepting that mistakes are part of the learning process, and making their evaluations privately. Students who set mastery goals are more persistent when facing a difficult task, use deeper thinking, and are able to relate new concepts to prior learning. Assessment for Learning helps students learn better, not just achieve better marks. It occurs when teachers use effective questioning techniques, when a classroom has a culture of inquiry, not of quick answers, and when learning and assessment require deep thinking. When assessment for learning is absent from a classroom and instead there exists a culture of rewards based on good grades in tests, students seek ways to get high marks, not to increase their understanding. Assessment for learning, when embedded within effective teaching strategies, has the power to motivate students and help them improve their learning outcomes. But assessment for learning is much more than an assessment tool. It is an integral part of the act of teaching itself. There is evidence to say that teachers do not have to make a choice between teaching well and getting good grades. Assessment for learning can achieve both.